Hey guys, it's Chris with IPFirst.com. I'm here with Brian Young, aka 8-Bit Brian, aka Big Balls.
Hit the camera.
Yep. Here to do a little interview with him. You might know him from some of his drift videos on YouTube.
Yep.
Or Facebook. Either using a sim rig or actually being out there slaying on the course.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll kind of jump in here. So you're kind of the 8-Bit Brian thing, that kind of came from a little bit with the 8-Bit Miata.
Yeah. When I started drifting the Miata, I participated in an import face-off drift event that Vegas Drift holds here. I think it was like 2014. And I won the event in that Miata. And it was basically stock with a roll bar and a welded diff and a straight pipe. And that was it. And I just got really lucky, and I walked away with first place on that one. Well, a buddy of mine, Paco, he made a little Instagram video because he knows I'm really big into like the retro gaming. The Instagram video was he took of me drifting. He would dub over the Mike Tyson's Punch Out kind of music to it, and he had like these pixelated effects and little flares, and it said 8-Bit Drifter like flashing on there, and it really got popular. Like a lot of people loved that. And I already was when I did the event, I had like the googly eyes over the headlights, the big ones, and
I love those pop-ups.
Yeah, I love the pop-ups, and so that it just kind of felt like there was a character kind of getting developed there with the car. So Paco had this idea about taking a 1-inch thick roll of black vinyl and just trying to draw lines. Like a pixelated lines on like how the car would look, say like if it was on a video game, kind of giving it that perspective. And I wasn't 100% sure on the idea, but I wanted, I figured why not give it a shot. I'm pretty open-minded about it. I'm just having fun with it. So we went to our friend Chris's shop at Elite Automotive Finishes, and he let us use a bay to just knock that out. So we were just playing video game music, swapping video game stories. It was John, Paco, and I, and we were just putting these lines on, just, hey, this looks good, okay, great, and just went along through the whole car. We got about half the car done when we stepped back, and we realized, wow, this actually looks really cool. Like, this is looking pretty awesome. So we finished the whole car, and it was just like a totally different car again. Like, this personality just stood out. That was something we'd never seen before. And when you take pictures of it, it really brings out a lot more of what the character is. I mean, don't get me wrong, the car looks great seeing it in person, but when you see it in pictures, it's kind of like a weird thing too. So we debuted the car as the 8-Bit Miata at the Chuckwalla Valley Raceway event we did with Arizona NASA, the National Automotive Sports Association. Association. Yeah.
The car guys, not the space guys.
Yeah, the car guys, not the space guys. Yeah. And yeah, so we got to run some drifting laps there. We made a video of it. It's the Chuckwalla stage video on my YouTube channel about that day we went drifting. It was really cool.
Awesome. And then so eventually you kind of started to move on from that. You decided to sell the Miata, which
sold it to you.
Yep, sold to me.
Yeah, so which I appreciate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still the 8-Bit Miata, 8-Bit MX-5, and just now with the big old IPFirst.com on the side.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I couldn't think of a better person to take the car. I was really happy you bought it because you're keeping the car alive, keeping the character alive. And I didn't want to sell it. It was just something I needed to do to get the money to jumpstart another car. I was with the 8-Bit Miata for 2 years, and it was getting to the point that I couldn't do anything more with the car. The way it was, unless I wanted to invest in like going V8 or going rotary, or V6 or something, anything, to give it more power. I even looked at turbocharging it, and the thing, every time I talked to my friends about this idea, the thing that kept coming back was like, you really should get into a car that will challenge you, kind of be a little more competitive. Not to say the Miata is a bad car. The Miata is a great training car, but it's smarter to try to make the investment now, because my goal is to be in Pro-Am, to compete, and to try to build another car for that. And so that was the only way for me to get the money to jumpstart that was to sell a car. But I'm just glad that, you agreed to buy the car on the terms of me teaching you how to drift, which was thought was really cool. And I think that kicked off like the first drift clinic, and that's how the drift clinic with Go Fast Entertainment started, which is if anybody doesn't know, it's where we have like a monthly drift event, and for just amateur open night drifting, and we'll have like a training class for about 4 hours before the main event starts. So drivers like Chris who are new to drifting, or maybe drivers who have been trying it for a while, not really getting it down, have a chance to sit with an instructor and fine tune their skills to be able to enjoy their open drift night even more. So that was awesome. It really worked out great. When I asked him, I was like, hey, I got a friend who asked me to teach him how to drift. He's ready to bring the car, and they happened to be working on this idea already. So it was just perfect timing. It worked out great.
Yeah, that first drift clinic, I remember.
Yeah.
It was June 18th.
Yeah.
I drove back from LA that Friday from being out at E3 all week. Came out that Saturday morning, 118 degrees out.
Yeah, it was a tough day.
It's tough, but it was worth it.
Yeah, it was a good amount of students. We had like about 5, 6, 8. I think we split it between 2 different times, I think, that day too, because some people came in late. It was a little rough at the start, but it runs really good now. It's been over a year now since we've been doing it, so it's a lot of fun.
So on this new car, you want to maybe talk a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, I ended up getting BMW. It's a 2000 BMW 323 Ci, which is also known as the E46 chassis. And so it's a coupe and 2-door. And I'm putting in the Toyota 1JZ engine in it with aftermarket turbo upgrades, pretty much a lot of power adders to put it. We're shooting for in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 horsepower. And I got the M3 of the same year, or well, actually the M3 came out later, but I got the M3 E46 rear suspension and differential to put into the car. So it has a tighter final drive gear, and I took the transmission out of a E36 M3, which is the previous generation BMW, which is a 5-speed. So that 5-speed with that final drive seems to match up really well with that kind of power. And I had got a special kit to mate those two together. So yeah, I've been investing a lot of money into this. So it's kind of scary because I never built a car like this before, and I mostly been drifting barely modified or stock cars, and I seem to pick up that pretty, I have a lot of fun with those. But to be a full-on car with this kind of power and being this purpose built, it's going to have we're looking at different angle kit options, but it's going to be a tremendous amount of angle. It's going to be a competitive car. That was the idea, is to make the sacrifices I need to make in my life and financially to be able to build a car that will allow me to grow. So it will challenge me. I'm kind of scared about the whole thing about this car, getting into it, but I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope that when I put that helmet on, that the right switches go on in my head to keep the car off the wall and just keep it on track and do good.
Yeah. So is this one going to be kind of video game themed too, or?
Yes, definitely continuing with because I'm still retaining the 8-Bit Bryan name. I'm not changing that, but the car is kind of like, there's you get that second generation of consoles coming out, so this is kind of like that. So we're working on like calling it the 16-bit Beamer, is the working name right now. I'm not going to be doing like the matching the kind of livery the 8-bit Miata has. It looks really good on that car, and I've tried it on Forza, trying to experiment with a lot of different cars. It really doesn't look good on very many other cars. So, and they even tried it on the E46. It didn't appear to me to be very clean. I think it's probably what worked for the Miata is that it was a very it wasn't a lot of body to do it on, and had no top. So it looked cleaner. But when you do it on cars with a full solid roof, like the E46, it starts looking a little weird and it doesn't really flow very well. So we got something else in mind for that. It's kind of like a yin and yang kind of thing where we're kind of working with on this new one. So it's not going to be as crazy as I want it to be, like my first couple of ideas, but it's definitely doable. And that's the important thing. So
Yeah.
at least it looks better than what it does right now.
Yeah. And then, so you don't only just drift in real life. You also have a drift rig.
Yes.
And that's been kind of making the rounds a lot. I've seen you drift in Forza on your sim rig. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah. I built a custom rig. It's really weird how that came about. It wasn't like I looked up anything online or I didn't buy anything to build it to where it is now, other than the materials to make it. But I didn't have any like preset plans. I saw like some schematics of very generic kind of like, home built wooden rig setups. So I expanded on that, and that's what became the rig as it is now. So I got a 240, S13 dash, chopped it down to where it's just the driver's side and the controls and center console. I got the center console, and then I flocked it all black, which is, that nice kind of like non-reflective kind of furry stuff. Like rally cars use that a lot. A lot of race cars use that to prevent reflection from the sunlight on the dash. I got a little cup holder on it. I have a seat from my old rig that I used to have. I use on it now. I use a Thrustmaster TX wheel. I have a DSD racing wheel adapter. And I took the original steering wheel, because they come out with like these little, they have a little like a chuck or something like that, or where you go down, unscrew the wheel in there, and it has like a PS2 type of connector in between them, so they will be able to make contact. So what I did is I took the connector from inside the wheel and routed it to point out the back, and then I took the wheel out of the original wheel that came with the TX, and then I cut off the actual steering wheel part of it, so it turned to more like a button box, and I fitted it into the button box. And then I just bought a cable and just ran the cable to connect the two, male to female. And then I was able to use that DSD adapter to screw on where the original wheel was. And then I used that to put on an NRG quick release hub, and then a 350 millimeter NRG deep dish wheel. So that way it simulates more of like the actual diameter of wheel I'm using. Probably going to be using that wheel in the car anyways. So it's a lot of fun to build that and put that together. And it's definitely better than my old rig. My old rig, because if you look at my YouTube channel, I have some really old Forza 4 videos from like back in 2012, 2013. And I had this rig that I built out of a big box, big screen TV. You remember those old ones with like the really deep rear projection TVs? Well, somebody had one on the side of the street because it was broken. And it just kind of just hit me. It's like, wow, I could probably do something with this. And so I brought it home, chopped it down, got bunch of scrap wood. I went as cheap as possible on this and just layered scrap wood, in certain places and trying to support it in certain ways with like this box. I just bought a random box of screws where the screws were like this long. So they were like going through the wood and just poking out the other end. And by the time I was all done, you have to get into the rig very carefully so you don't get jabbed by the various screws. And I made this weird box for the shifter, and it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And that thing ended up breaking, and then I repaired. So it was nice to be able to have a rig that I was able to build and make it look really nice and usable. And it's been lasting for a long time.
So you mostly do Forza 4, and then you just started getting to Forza 7 on there, right? Yeah.
On Forza 4, the rig I built, unfortunately, didn't, the wheel I have doesn't work on the Xbox 360, but I had one of those like prop-up stand rigs with a pole in the middle for the Fanatec wheel. I used the Fanatec CSR on Forza 4. So yeah, that's what I used for the longest time on Forza. Where I had an Elite wheel before that, but the early generation Elite wheels didn't last very long. They weren't very good, or maybe they just didn't take the abusive drifting very well. But the CSR wheel, for whatever reason, they really take a lot more than what the Elite had, from my experience. But my CSR wheel ended up taking a dump, so that's why I went to building a new rig and got that wheel. And then my first Thrustmaster base unit, that died, so I went back to and I bought another CSR wheel. Went back to Forza 4 for a while, and then that wheel broke, so I went buying a base. I'm just all over the place. It's just kind of like I'm still procrastinating on keeping a rig alive, because I'm in the process of trying to balance all my money between the short film and the drift car build, and then taking care of everything else, like bills and stuff. So But now I'm on Forza 7, yes, and it was definitely worth the jump. I came in at the right time too, because when Forza 7 first came out, there was a lot of problems I understood with bugs and whatever errors. But then there was this huge patch that came out, and it fixed like a lot of those problems. So I got the game like just after this patch came out. And so when I jumped in, my experience was much more satisfying, my first impression, which I wrote a review article on in the Maximum Driftcast website, telling a lot more about my impressions of Forza 7. Bottom line, though, I really enjoy playing the game. It's definitely a good move if you're a Forza 4 guy and looking to make that jump to the Xbox One racing games. Forza 7 is worth the jump. It doesn't have Fujimi Kaido, but you know, so I don't consider it the best, but it's definitely a very acceptable step up.
How would it compare to Assetto Corsa on the PC, you think?
Assetto Corsa is a very different animal when it comes to like the sim racing world. A lot of people argue too between consoles and PC, you know, like who actually follows the definition of sim. To me, it's about what you get out of it. And a simulation, if it's helping you achieve something that can be utilized in a real world environment in some form, because like simulators originated in the military and or avionics, you know, or aviation. I mean, so all that technology started bleeding down to you know, watered down versions for the public to be able to use. And then eventually started coming into consoles in an even weaker version than that. But then consoles started eventually coming up to being a little more comparable. The physics in Forza 7 is really good, in my opinion. Just because I feel the same sense of reflex reaction instead of having to think about it or really compensate. Now, it took a long time to get a wheel to behave that way. It took me like several months, actually, to really, really fine-tune a car to meet what I feel gives a more realistic feedback. Now, I'm pretty tolerable of a lot of nuances of, you know, that doesn't make it behave like one-to-one, exactly like a real car. And a lot of people are like that. It's like, it's either got to be that or it's not good enough. You know what I mean? And that's great if that's what makes them happy. But I really have fun with pretty much everything. And I can adapt to these little nuances that Gran Turismo may have with drifting, or Forza may have with drifting, or Need for Speed, or Assetto Corsa, R-Factor, Live for Speed. It doesn't matter. Or even if like players want to use a controller or instead of a wheel because maybe they just don't have the money to buy a wheel, which is fine. As long as you have really good track etiquette, which is the biggest thing. You're not a douche on the track. And you know how to run a good line and you can keep a good tandem. Just be a polite driver. You know, we're all there to have fun, and there's no room for douchebaggery or arrogant, you know, driving, which unfortunately I've seen a lot of in Forza 7, which I mentioned in the article. You see a picture of like these like 3 or 4 open wheel cars that are in a drift lobby for the sole intention of just ruining everybody's time there by just wrecking into them if anybody tries to pass them. So they just cruise along at like, you know, really slow speed, and anybody tries to drift around them, they just... Anyways, and Assetto Corsa, from my experience, it's not really much better because you get a lot of like, overly aggressive drivers, and maybe they never drifted a real car in real life. It's still very much, even though it's a simulator, they drive it like an arcade. So there's an effort to be made, you know, like to try to talk to people and say, hey, look, you know, don't be so aggressive, or, you know, just try to go with the flow a little bit more. And Assetto Corsa, for the drifting part of it, is really dependent on the modders, you know, people who mod or build tracks or build cars or make mods to make the cars more like drift cars or whatever else they do. So there's really no standardization in how these mods are done or what effects they have, or where did they get their information to interpret what's realistic with these cars. So now, they're satisfying, don't get me wrong, and you can find ways in fine-tuning them in Assetto Corsa to be able to behave more like what your real drifting experience is like. But it takes a lot of work to really kind of dial that in. And plus, there's people who will like open the car files or open the track files, and they'll make changes in those to better suit, to make it easier for them to drift. which I consider giving an unfair advantage because it's like I'm not opening my car files and I'm just using what's allowed for me to use in the interface for tuning the car. I'm not trying to open the car's file and trying to hack the parameters of what the car is to be able to make it suit whatever intention of the person who's doing that is, which is ultimately just trying to be a super light car or super fast or whatever it is they're doing, or tracks like say like Mayhan on one guy's server can be totally different from Mayhan on another guy's server because one guy decided to hack the track and make the surface behave differently because his interpretation of how it should feel like might be different from somebody else's. So that's where it gets really wonky with Assetto. But if you get in with a really good lobby, is like the 2F Performance server is probably, well, from my experience on Assetto, is the best one because they really kind of create a more standardization on what they allow to have players use. Since that's the great thing about it, because when you're in the lobby, you have to choose the cars from the server in order to be able to drive. You can't just pick any car you want. So that kind of helps there. And unfortunately, I'm not really very knowledgeable technically of the more details in that, because there's probably things that people will probably comment or say that is this and that, and I'm just not knowing this. But from my experience, the best way to enjoy Assetto Corsa is with like-minded drivers. You know, drivers who don't feel the need of manipulating the car more than it needs to be, or if they do, sharing that information because it might benefit everybody else in some way, to be able to create a more a better learning environment for drifting, because then we're all on the same page. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't really, it doesn't benefit anybody but the individual. And if they're all about themselves and they're drifting, they're just going to have a bad time because nobody can either drive as fast as they do, or they can't lead, so nobody wants to tandem with them because they just disappear way too fast. And then they complain that you're going too slow. And it's like, well, you know, there you go. So that's kind of the thing where I'm back and forth between like how I feel about Assetto. But all that aside, when I do drift it and when I'm enjoying it as it is, the drifting, it definitely feels one-to-one, the closest thing to one-to-one of what it would feel like in a drift car with like the response and stuff like that. The wheels spin back, the feedback is really good. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. And what I love about Assetto is that all the toge courses that they have. I love the mountain courses so much. And yeah, so it's cool to explore the game and all the different tracks that you can get from modders and stuff like that. And a lot of them do a really good job in replicating real world mountain courses too. And that's probably one of my most desired things to do whenever I'm on Assetto Corsa, other than like the Tuesday night drift nights with buddies. So
yeah, and so with esports getting bigger and bigger, you see with Gran Turismo, they got their Gran Turismo Academy. You can earn actually FIA credits to get your actual competition license through just playing Gran Turismo on a simulator. Forza, they had a tournament where you got to share the podium with actual racers at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Do you see drifting getting somewhere with that, with like an official series, and maybe sharing podium with FD drivers or something like that? Or
I'll post. There's something that's been going on that I don't know if I should really say anything yet, but I've been invited to be a part of something, and I think once it's official, then I'll be posting about it. But yeah, there's definitely been some talk with the drifting side of things with esports.
And then I know you kind of hinted at a short film earlier, Live and Die in LS.
That's right.
Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a short film I started back in June of 2016. And it was a project I took on because a lot of drama with trying to get started with the car, and the job I was working at the time wasn't really making a lot of things possible. But I needed a kind of a creative outlet, and it was very affordable for me to do that with something like the Rockstar editor. Because the Grand Theft Auto 5 on the Xbox One, PS4 has a editing portion of the things that you can do on there. So you can like record just you playing the story mode, or you record you playing online with your friends, and then it'll store all that footage, and then you can go into the editor and just take your clips, chop them, move the camera around. It even allows you to do like some titling, some basic stuff. You can take some of the music that exists in the game. They'll let you choose from that. But in there, there's this director mode thing. I didn't really like it at all, though. But it was kind of like it was kind of limited. But the camera movements and the options, the filters, the focus changes, it did enough to really kind of create the cinematic effect. Like you could feel how it was doing a good job of creating that movie type of environment. So, and I knew a lot of people were doing this for a while, making machinimas, but most of them were just like just ballistic, mayhem of just killing cops, and you can see their bodies just being pelted with blood flying out, but they're still running around shooting their gun. It's just mindless mayhem. And they made their movies of it, or you'll see like people make them of like a car show, or like a car exposition. Like they'll do a music video of a car doing around. Some of those are really cool. But I wanted to see a real cinematic, like a movie experience. I wanted to see something with the story. And this is where it gets really complicated, because you can't really add dialogue. Like the Rockstar editor itself, it doesn't allow you to like record dialogue in there. You have to try to find your own way of doing that. So that's where a lot of guys who have been starting to practice voiceover work, they were doing it on like the PC version of GTA 5. There's a lot of mods on there as well for making there's mods for the editing. There's a lot more tools on that. But when I started with the Xbox One. So Grand Theft Auto 5 Xbox One, when I finally decided to experiment with it. And as I was playing along, I kind of like I just went into story mode with the character Michael, and I put on a suit on him, and I just kind of just played out just something in my mind, just letting myself just run free, like to put myself there, like what would be cool to do, what would be fun to do. And I just started driving around and doing stuff, and then I would go back to the footage, and I finally felt like I was like something was kind of coming together. It's like, okay, well, let's continue off of this, or where would I go from here? And so then I see the next part of the story starting to evolve, and I did this like continuously. It's just like I started noticing more and more like there was really something coming together here. And so I would edit in small sections. Now, a lot of guys, they'll want to like put a movie out real quick and just show their work real fast. But for me, I wanted to hold off until I could share something that I really, really enjoyed watching myself. Like I could watch it over and over and over again and think it's the best. And that kind of made me feel like, I'm okay with not putting out something right away. I'll wait until I got this section done, polish it up really nice, maybe do something more with it. I don't know. Like I found a way of getting the files onto my PC from the Xbox One to the PC, where I can do post editing on Sony Vegas. And long story short, over the period of from June 2016 to now, I ended up with 48 minutes of footage that has been pulled off the Xbox One only, no mods, no nothing else, and all edited on Sony Vegas. I built my own do-it-yourself kind of recording studio in my spare bedroom, and I brought in a great group of talented voice actors who were enthusiastic about the project after I showed them like the footage and everything, and they all wanted to be a part of it. Even Jared Deanda from Formula Drift is the voice of the main character. It was awesome working with him, and he did a really good job on putting his talent into the character, along with everybody else too. I felt really fortunate that I got a lot of really good group of people that gave believable characters in the voice. It felt very legit, I guess is the best way to put it. So I did my best, and after that, I was so motivated, as one after another, like these friends and talented, like aspiring voice actors or working voice actors like Jared, being a part of this project. So Yeah, I just been putting it all together. I commissioned an artist to do a professionally hand-drawn movie poster, which is like the art style of the, you know, those cut scenes when you're loading the loading screen scenes in Grand Theft Auto 5, you know,
Yeah.
where the artwork is kind of like moving all weird and stuff. It's like that kind of artwork, but it was like a collage of like various action and stuff like that. And I have a time-lapse video that the artist took of him drawing the whole poster. Yeah. Then I commissioned a very talented composer, and that was really important to me, was having music that was a completely original. Like I'm not ripping it off of any other movie or other video game or anything like that. This is music that was made specifically inspired by my movie to be used in it. So it took me a couple of times. Like the first time I tried to present it to Protector 101, he was like, you know, I'm kind of busy with this and that and all that stuff. The movie wasn't really 100% polished. And I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to back off the whole music thing, get this done a lot more, and I'm going to go back at him again. So about a couple months, like 3 or 4 months later, I hit him up again. And then I used a demo soundtrack, like soundtrack from movies that I felt the closest to reflect what I wanted people to feel,
Right.
and like the emotions. So music is so important in movies. Like
It is.
The emotion that you have to experience in order to be able to relate to what you're watching, and you become caring of the character. And then that's when you become invested in the movie. If you give a shit about the guy that you're looking at, guy or girl you're looking, you know, or running through the story with. So if you don't give a shit, then it doesn't matter anymore. And I don't want to do a cop out of just like, you know, just guns and car chases and blah 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 from start to finish. You know, this is a story that builds over time, and things get better as the story moves along. So I try to do the best I can in keeping people involved in it. And so that's where like the voice actors and their talents come into play. The music comes into play because you're really enjoying what you're seeing. All the shots that I took and the way the camera moves. All these things come together to where it goes into this 3-act process. Even though it's on a short film, I still kind of followed that traditional format. And yeah, man, it's I got the soundtrack. You know, he finished the soundtrack. We took like several sessions, like 3 or 4 hour sessions of him and I going back and forth on figuring out the music for the movie. Like he would have a copy with the demo score. Oh yeah, that's when he said yes. When I sent him the copy with the demo score, he said yes, I'll do this. He was super excited because now he got it. You know, he's like, okay, this makes sense now.
Okay.
And so he, because I used a lot of, like, I knew kind of some of the composers that inspired him. So I was kind of like, you know, just like, now you like it. But yeah, he was super enthusiastic, and he was so awesome to work with. Him and Nick Crouch was the poster artist. Nick was also incredible to work with too. He gave me updates all the time. He was just, again, he saw the same video with the soundtrack. He was super pumped after he watched it. So yeah, there was very few people who have seen this movie in its entirety during its, you know, the phase that it was at the time, but it's almost done now. The soundtrack is done. I'm working on another big hurdle though, and that's the art of sound editing. Sound editing has never been something I had experience with or really invested in, but now I have to, because I am definitely not letting this movie go public until I feel that the sound is just right. And I'm getting opinions from professionals too, who been kind enough to allow me to kind of like, you know, pick their brain and figuring this out and making sure I do a good job, because I can't really afford a professional engineer to, you know, do a full on master of this. And it's kind of a challenge too, because one of the things when you're recording or when you go over your footage inside the Xbox One Rockstar editor, you have the option of placing a mic, you know, mic by the camera or mic by the selected character or something like that, to pick up specific sounds. And I realized that even though I figured that out when I was editing, that only now do I realize how important it was to have the mic at a different place than I thought at the time. And there's no way of me going back to fix that now. So I still recorded the sound I want, like say like an explosion. The explosion is far away. I want it to be a little bit louder. And if I try to turn it up, then it goes into distortion. You know, there's all these rules that you have to follow. Like you can't pass, you know, 0.0 dB and all this other stuff. So figuring all that out is something that I've been constantly battling with. But it'll get done, and that's the last thing left to do. After that, the movie's done, and I'm going to be renting a movie theater to show it at. And that's when I'll be putting the invites for people who want to go. And what I'm going to do after that, though, I'm going to be inviting like yourself, and a few other people who want to write an article about their experience with the movie and what they liked about it, and try to build some hype. But I'm not going to put the movie online. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing just a little bit of a tour. I'm going to start pitching the movie to film festivals or just local bar arcades or just even bars or anywhere there's anybody that wants to have like a cool, short movie they want to show at their place, just to kind of like build some hype and see what comes out of it. So
yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Are there any other kind of games you've been playing or interested in?
I'm waiting for Far Cry 5. I'm a huge Far Cry fan.
Yeah.
Far Cry 3 is I played Far Cry 1 on PC a long time ago, and I loved that game. I loved the whole stealth mode in it and all that stuff. But when I got to Far Cry 3, that was with Voss. I think it was a real famous villain character with the mohawk. Yeah, that actor did a great job with him. Really, yeah. And the story was okay. It worked. But, oh, my God, there was nothing more satisfying than a long-distance bullseye with a bow and arrow. I'm telling you, that was like my favorite weapon out of the whole game. So I really got into the mechanics that Far Cry created with the stealth aspect of it, the ability to be able to kill people undetected, or if detected, being able to evade being killed. So,
guns blazing. It's all up to you. Exactly.
So it's very, very difficult for me, I feel, anyways, to go into playing Far Cry 5 or for any of the Far Cry games, guns blazing. I mean, unless you have like all the options filled up and all this other stuff and all that, you're going there like freaking Arnold Commando. You're not, unless you have that, you're really not going to do that well. I've seen videos of other guys who will do ridiculous stunts, and they have this whole thing planned out, and they'll like use a squirrel suit a lot to kind of like jump around off of buildings and stuff like that, and it doesn't feel very realistic. So I took after beating the game, I decided to go through it again, but in the most realistic way possible. So that means no radar, no HUD, no nothing, and no filling up your health bar, no adding new health bars. Whatever health bars you have from the start that you can't avoid getting more of, that's what you end up with, and that's it. And I would go so far as I only use specific guns, like guns that bad guys drop or guns that are given to me. That's it, except for the bow and arrow. I'll take the bow and arrow. But
yeah, take the bow and arrow.
Yeah. So I had to use that shitty revolver for a while until I finally found somebody I killed dropped a 911. But I would use the AKs or whatever weapons were available to me around the environment I was in. Because to me, the way I looked at it was that, when you're in that jungle in that town, even though they have a weapon shop and stuff like that, I mean, come on. They're not going to really have full-on crazy assault rifles in this village. Maybe they will. I don't know. That guy with the weapons, sure, you could play it that way. You can play it off any way you want. But the bottom line is that the effort of making it real, to me, was utilizing your environment around you to be able to survive. And you don't have HUDs and all this other bullshit or radar. The only thing I did allow, though, is because I don't have actual 300 normal peripheral vision, I did allow the detectors. If somebody is hitting me or something like that, I'll have a detection on that. Or if there's somebody who's going to see me in the corner, sometimes you'll see that little meter fill up on the side. So in peripheral vision, you should be able to detect that in some degree, but that's it. And that's about the most I allow. And I think in Far Cry 4, I might have turned it off. I can't remember now. But you see what I'm trying to go for, though.
Right.
It's creating to where you have to use your mind strategically to be able to move around your environment. So because, again, going back to the limited peripheral vision, I'd have to do this a lot, moving around. Everywhere I go, I'd have to just quick left and right. So
extreme hard mode.
Yeah, I'm mapping my environment in my mind as I'm continuing forward, so that I know where I'm at. So even though I'm not looking at it, I know where this wall ends or where that building ends. So if I need to evade or hide, I can go right over there and do that. And always moving as quietly and stealthy as possible. And I never, ever, ever, not once used the stupid tagging system with cameras and animals. I don't care. if you can't survive with that, then you're not good enough to play in the hard mode. But you can't use the camera, period. You can't tag anybody. So because what happens when you do that, you start seeing them through walls.
Mm-hmm.
That is the biggest baby holding technique I've ever seen in a video game. But I am so happy that Ubisoft gives you the option to turn all the handicaps off, all the training wheels off, and let you go in as hardcore as you possibly could. The one thing, for the perks that build up, what I do build up is like some of the knife attacks. Not the crazy multiple chain ones, but enough of the close quarter ones that you'd see, like maybe up to like levels of like a Navy SEAL would have, or some knife tactician, things like that. But never the health bar. I do allow syringes and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not that hard on it. I mean, it's not like I'm never going to replenish my health in some way or another. But it's harder though, because you only have like 2 bars, I think, is what you go through the entire game with. And when you pick up a sniper rifle, then you can use a sniper rifle as much as you want. It's because that's you found one. So it's in your inventory. Building up the backs, like when you skin animals and all that stuff, I'll build those up too. Just to be able to be able to carry stuff, but. For the weapons that I carry, though, I'll even limit to where I have to have a pistol and the bow and arrow, but then I'll usually carry like like a short submachine gun, something that could be like a strap on your side, and then your main big rifle, whether it's an automatic machine gun or a sniper rifle in the back. So I can't have a sniper rifle and an AK-47 and whatever else big weapons that you want to have, like a minigun and all that other stuff too.
I like those old school games where you could just have.
Oh yeah, you have like 20 weapons running around. So I do, even though the game allows you to do a lot of stuff, I purposely limit myself to make it as challenging as possible for me, and I have a lot of fun in that. And that's what I get out of it. That's why I love the Far Cry games. Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4 did the same thing. I am super pumped on Far Cry 5 to bring that new environment. And what I want to do with Far Cry 5, and I might do this as a Twitch thing too, is I want to go into the game with the same philosophy from the beginning, not knowing what anything is or where anything is at. I don't know how enjoyable it'll be for people to watch me constantly fail, or maybe it will be enjoyable for them, but that's kind of what's been running around my head. But that game's coming out like in March.
Yes.
So this year. Yeah, March this year. Yeah, that's not far from now. So looking forward to that one.
Over a month now.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't play a lot of various games though. Far Cry, like I would go between Forza, Grand Theft Auto, and Far Cry, and then I would play games with my wife. Like we love Rockstar's L.A. Noire. I need to buy the new edition one that came out. Yeah, I want to buy the remake. There's some new stuff they got on there. It looks really, really cool. I love the story. I love the music. I'm a big sucker for 1940s LA crime dramas. Love that stuff a lot. What else do we play? Like the horror games, like Outlast and Deadly Halls, I think is what it was, something like that. Some VR-ish type of game. Like I remember I was playing that on like the phone type of VR. And those games that like she just likes watching me play. Like she's too scared to play them, but she'll enjoy watching me play, and we'll get freaked out together on that. But that's about it. I mean, I don't play RPGs or most anything else really. I mean, I like a lot of games that are out there, but it's just because of time. With all the other things that I'm doing, especially the movie, really made me limit down a lot of what I do for gaming to as enjoyment on the side. So yeah, it was like doing the movie with Grand Theft Auto 5 was kind of like my gaming time at the same time. Forza, I kind of use it as like a part of like a workout program. So, because you build up a sweat, playing that thing. You get into a couple of 8-minute sessions and you're like, ugh. So, yeah, I'm finding ways of trying to implement gaming in a productive manner in some way. And then when Far Cry is just just me having fun. That's, you know, you got to have fun in video games too. It doesn't have to all be work with video games.
Right. You gotta enjoy it sometimes.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I've come down to though. But I every once in a while I'll dab into the 8-bit Nintendo, you know, have some fun with that. And I need to set that back up again too. And I'm going to be doing review videos again with PlayStation 2, famous PlayStation 2 racing games, which is a lot of them. Like Need for Speed Underground series, the Tokyo Extreme Racer Drift series, and many, many others. You know, so that's going to be a lot of fun to do too.
Before you were just showing me some Japanese PlayStation 2 racing game. Oh
yeah, the Series 2000. It's just discovered what that is, and that looks badass. I can't wait to pick up some. There's some really cool titles out there that I like. When I posted about it, a lot of people started making recommendations. They're seeing Tourist Trophy. You remember what Tourist Trophy is? I'm gonna do a whole series.
The motorcycle one?
Yes.
Gran Turismo? That's
right. And I'm gonna do an entire series of every single Gran Turismo game up until the last one for PlayStation 2. So I think it's Gran Turismo 4. And in that, I'm going to do the Tourist Trophy. And I have the Yamaha handlebar controller that came with the game. Where it was sold separately, but it was for the game. Like they were released at the same time. So that's going to be a trip to see and how that works.
Being I beat it first, was there a game that you beat before your friends or that you just beat probably the most? You played to completion? So now for me, personally, probably the game not necessarily beat before everyone else, but just beat the most in kind of recent memory was first Mass Effect.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember playing that one because like, oh, your saves carry over. So I beat that game 3 times using the exact same character and just like, no, I got to do it over again because I didn't get all the decisions I wanted.
Yeah,
Try to make it perfect. So I kept beating it over and over, and I still just use the same character, same class, just rolling over, just up my level each time.
Nice. A game that I done that with, man. I don't know if I beat it first between my friends, but this is going way back. I rolled asteroids. You know what that means?
Does that mean you've got to restarted?
Yeah, when you can only accumulate so many points before it rolls over back to 0 again. And on the Atari 2600, I rolled asteroids when I was a kid. So. Yeah. Everyone's like, what? Who gives a shit about that? No, but as for like the closer modern games, but I'd say like Tekken. Yeah, I was a real good. I really mastered Tekken. Like I was adamant about getting good at every single character. Tekken Tag Tournament for the PlayStation 2. Tekken was a regular. High school and moving to the city, having roommates and all that stuff. It was always Tekken parties or LAN parties and stuff like that. And that was a big thing. Was for me, it was just really getting good at Tekken. Time. So I think I was the first out of all my friends to beat Tekken with all the characters and master everybody's 10-hit combo and all that stuff. Yeah, so I got pretty good at that.
Is there any other projects you want to talk about or shout outs and plugs?
Projects. I'm going to be probably building more sim rigs. I've been asked about building some for people. So I'm probably going to do it for a few friends. So that way if they fuck up, they'll be nice about me fixing it. But and get better about trying to produce more. And looking at that as an avenue of hopefully putting some more money in my pocket to help build my car. The videos, I have a vlog on YouTube that I'm doing the best I can to keep that up to date and as things continue. And more media like that, like the review videos I was talking about, stuff like that. So those are the big projects that's coming up. You can find me also on Maximum Driftcast. That's the Maximum Driftcast podcast. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch. And I'm the control room operator. So I'm the guy switching cameras and adjusting volumes and calling people on Skype for the guests or whoever's coming on that day. And every once in a while, I get to chime in and say something too. So See what else is going on. I think that's it. I'm probably forgetting something. I just can't remember everything. 8-bit Brian's 8-bit BRYAN, and or it's at 8bit_Brian on Instagram, and Twitch is Big Balls 8-bit Brian. Now, Big Balls is a nickname they gave me on the Maximum Driftcast show. It's not the name I'm officially going by, but it's a nickname that was acquired, and I'm okay with it. But I'm still definitely officially 8-bit Brian.
All right. I guess that kind of concludes this. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you very much. See you guys.
Bye.